Welcome everybody to Lumio Palooza 2026. My name is Terry Politi, and today we are with Chani Barton from Philadelphia about making complex connections and visible with hexagonal thinking. First of all, I am going to do a little spiel here, but while I do that, I am going to put her link in the chat so that you can all join her session. And then while you're doing that, if you'd also like to tell us where you're from, that would be awesome. We'd love to know who's in the audience today. I have a couple things to talk about. One, just make sure you're sharing stuff in the chat, and if it's good, or if we need to bubble it up a little bit more, I'll bring it in the chat for Chani to answer. And then also realize that with Lumio Palooza today, if you shout out on social and add at Lumio Social or hashtag Lumio Palooza 2026, you could win a $25 gift card. The giveaways are at 7 o'clock tonight and 7 o'clock tomorrow night. Just letting you know that. We'll give you a little bit of time at the end for that. But a reminder that all sessions are recorded and that we'd love for you to be a student in Chani's classroom just so that you can see what all the things she's talking about. And then at the end of this session, we'll also give you the whole file so that you'll be able to walk away with everything you need. So with that, let's meet Chani Barton, technology program specialist with the School District of Philadelphia. It's hard for me to talk about Chani because I've known her for quite some time and in all different roles, but she really drives innovation with digital initiatives and really looks at the tools and the strategy of what works when, with which kids, with which groups, with which teachers, and realizes it's all different every time. So she plans all those things, melds them all beautifully, and you're going to see some of that in her session today. She is definitely passionate about digital literacy for the whole community. So she also will bring that into her session, making complex connections visible with hexagonal thinking. So Chani, if you want to take it away, that would be awesome.
All righty. Welcome, everybody. We're so glad that you are joining us. I know for those of us in the United States, at least on the East Coast, it's kind of later in the evening. But wherever you're joining us from, we're very, very happy to have you. So this is me. I am a technology program specialist, and here are my social media links if you want to reach out, LinkedIn and Tech with Chani on Instagram or at Science Chani on X. All right, Terry. So we're going to start talking about hexagonal thinking. And here's our agenda that we're going to go through during this next bit of time that we're going to spend together. So we're going to look at hexagonal thinking and discourse. All right. If you're not familiar with this tool, hexagonal thinking is a graphic organizer, but the whole purpose is to help kids to communicate and talk about whatever the topic is that you want them talking about. All right, so we're going to go through and we're going to look at some examples and ideas for mixing up the rigor. We're going to look at some lower elementary ideas and some middle school ideas and some high school ideas. And then I'm just going to show you very quickly towards the end where to go to get to this graphic organizer within Lumio. So that's our agenda for the time that we're going to have together. And I wanted to kind of explain this hexagonal thinking idea. All right. So students are going to take hexagon shapes. And in those shapes, there's going to be keywords, concepts, images, and they're going to move these things into interconnected webs. All right. Because each hexagon has 6 sides, it offers multiple connection points, sparking creative debate, deep critical thinking, and collaborative discussion. Okay, so one of the big important pieces with this idea is that there is no single right answer. And as Terry and I were talking about what we wanted to do for Lumio Palooza this year, this was one of those things that we really kind of had to wrap our minds around, is that as long as the person that is creating it can argue their point in a meaningful way, then they're good to go. Like, there is no single one best way to create this. And you guys are going to see that here in a minute. Okay. The value of this activity is the dialogue that's required. Okay. Students have to negotiate, they have to justify their choices, and they have to provide evidence for why 2 ideas belong to each other. Okay. So that whole, claim, reasoning, evidence, we can pull that in when we're talking here in hexagonal thinking. All right. And then we're going to be revealing nuance, moving the shapes, allow students to realize that complex ideas can share multifaceted relationships, challenging them to go beyond surface level definitions, right? It's one thing to just know what a word means. It's another thing to know how that meaning connects to all of the other concepts that you're learning about. Okay. So that's kind of a background about what hexagonal thinking is and how it can support discourse. All right. So we are going to give this a try. Terry, are you ready? Have you been practicing?
I am ready because as Chani and I were talking about these ideas going back and forth, I was a math teacher. You know, there's one right answer for a math teacher. So this kind of thinking had to bend until I got it. And now I get it. And actually, Chani, it's kind of interesting because in some of the other sessions that have been going on today, they've been talking a lot about trying to not use tech as much and not use tech for just regular reasons. But I think when administrators see an activity like Chani's about to do with you, you really get the idea that the tech could be just cards on a table, but because that's a lot of time for us, as the rest of you in the chat all know, teachers do not have time to be cutting all these things out. So, but it adds that discourse. So go for it, Chani, go for it.
All right. And in this situation, what you guys will see as Terry and I are going through this one, really the tech is secondary, right? It's a means to an end. The absolute value is the conversation that goes on between the two participants. So this first one that we're going to model for you would be as if we had two students sitting next to each other and one of the student has a device. Okay. And so the two students are talking, and that's the two students are Terry and I. And in this situation, we have some of our vocabulary words already. Okay. So this is from like an 8th grade science unit. You can see that we have the vocabulary, and the teacher has already put some of these here. Okay. Now the one that is turquoise, this one here, this was our starting one. And then the teacher came in and gave us a couple of other ones. All right. So now our job, Terry and I, what we're supposed to do is as we're talking and discussing and so on and so forth, is we're going to pull one of these hexagons over, and we're going to figure out where it sits. And then we're going to pull a word over to put it on. Now, remember that it has to connect. So it has to make sense. So if I put something here, then we have to discuss and we have to decide, okay, well, how does this match orbit and how does this match sun? Okay, if I put it here, it can just match sun. If I put it around over here, then it's got to match orbit and Earth. Okay, so we see how that works. All right, Terry, let me know. What do you want me to move and where?
Well, first, are we allowed to move what the teacher put on there?
Absolutely not.
Okay, I just need to ask that question first. All right.
Perfect. Gotta move with what's here.
All right, then I can live with that on this one. Then I think really what I want is moon phase. And in my head, I know there are different phases of the moon in Earth. I get to see all the different phases as a person. And the moon has different phases. So I think it connects where the Earth and the moon is, because those two both, the moon is obviously the moon and it has phases. And the Earth is the one where you see the phases because it circles around the Earth. Did that make sense?
That makes sense. I like it. I could, if I wanted to, I could come back and say, you know what, that I understand the Earth and the moon phase, but to be able to see the moon's phase, that also has something to do with orbit, right? So I could actually move this and say, oh, well, but the moon's phases happen because the moon is orbiting the Earth. Okay. So this is where there has to be a conversation that can go on, right? And then Terry might come back and say, yeah, but it has more to do with the Earth and the moon. And so we're going to move it back and we're going to have that conversation. All right. So that discourse, right? We're having this great dynamic conversation about our content, which is exactly what we want our kids doing. Okay. So it's not an obvious answer. And every student that does this is going to have a different answer potentially. Okay. All right. So we're going to try this with you guys. So those of you that are here with us, you have this same thing. Okay. The other piece that I want to pull in. So if we're talking about this as two students working together collaboratively, as a teacher, I might have a small group off to the side that I'm doing work with, right? And this is a station or a center that my kids are working on. So I need a way to get and to gather the conversation that's happening with my kids. All right. So when I turn this into a handout, which means that's what will make it interactive for you, what you're going to do is you're going to come on this little guy here. You're going to move your stuff and put it where it belongs. Then you're going to come on this little icon with the heart and the plus and the circle, and you're going to click on the microphone. Okay. And that microphone is where you're going to have a chance to add your audio. So you can argue your point about why the stuff is where you put it. Okay. So for starters, let me make this into a handout. And then on your side, you guys are going to click start. And then you are going to go ahead and move your objects around and add some audio. Terry, I really like this piece where I can hide student names. That way, if I have this on the board, right, up where, where it is, I can maybe have that option of hiding those names. That's really cool. And I like that it's defaulted on. That's super nice.
And just to give you guys, I saw in the chat question. Chani and I, the first one was really just to kind of show you what it would look like in a classroom between two kids. In a real classroom, it's going to look exactly like what Chani sees right here on her screen, where you'd have two kids, one piece of paper, and you'd be able to click in and see everybody's. And if you haven't seen this yet, this new thumbnail view, I absolutely love it because I can see who's working and who's not without actually diving into each other's papers. But I can dive into each other's papers just like I could before.
Right. And I can come in as a teacher and I can maybe give some feedback to this student. And I can say, hey, this is great. I love that you've pulled so many of these out. Let's go ahead and get some words on here and then make sure that you add your audio, right? So I can reinforce what my students are working on while they're working.
And I don't know what happened because Chani and I checked this, but get rid of that first hexagon because that's the one that must be on the front. If you use all the rest of the hexagons below it, the text should go in front of it.
Yes.
I don't know what happened. We checked it several times.
We did. There's a little bit of layering that we had to do for this one to work. All right, so we're going to give you just a few more seconds. I still see hexagons moving, but I want you to, if you haven't already, make sure that you add some audio on here. Okay, remember that audio is underneath the heart plus circle icon, this one right here, and then it's the microphone.
Yeah, and if you haven't used the microphone before, this is a great way to hear from every student or every group of students to get the voice of what they're thinking. So I'm going to be quiet for 30 seconds and let Chani be quiet for 30 seconds so you can record.
All right, that feels like 30 seconds. One of the things that I wanted to point out while you guys are working is that you'll notice if you look at my screen, you'll see that there's two of these that are grayed out. As a teacher, what I know is that these students have not pressed start. Okay, so on their computers, when they're on a handout, they have to click start. That's what prompts the thing to be created, and then I will be able to see that in the dashboard. All right. I can also click in and see student work bigger if I want to. Okay, so I just want to show this as well. Notice the name is still blurred out, which is really great. I really like that. Okay, so I can come in and I can quickly move through and I can see the students' work in a larger way. I can also come in and add my own feedback if I want, so they can see what's going on. Okay, so we're going to move past here because I want to show you some other examples. All right, so this example is one where all of the work is already done. Okay, and guys, you notice, those of you that were in there working away, you probably noticed now your screen changed because I still have control of your screen. So if you're looking at your Lumio screen, you'll notice that now you're seeing the same thing that we're seeing in our StreamYard. Okay, so this one is one that was done for the kids. Okay, so this is another way to use that same idea, that same model, but instead of having a word bank and letting the kids move things around on their own, I'm telling them what the answer is, but what they're having to explain to me now is why. Why does rate of change fit here and connect with these ideas and not over here? And why does rise and run fit here and maybe not here? Okay. And so on and so forth. And remember, there's no one right answer. So in theory, if the kids really know their stuff, there's going to be a lot of conversation that happens here. If I remember correctly, Terry, there actually are some of these that could go other places if we wanted them to, right? We could argue.
We could definitely argue about this. And probably like the rest of you that are in the audience, you have to see this hexagonal thinking. I can't even say it in your own content. I told you I was a high school math teacher. I needed to see it in my content to say, oh, I get it. change in y over change in x, that's the same thing as y2 minus y1, which is rate of change, which is rise over run. And it's all kind of connected there, and you could have done different orders. But I could have also seen people put it with linear equations because that's part of the same thing. So it's kind of a little bit different. So a couple of questions that are popping up. So first of all, Chani, can you click on that mic right now?
Yes.
On your screen? It's locked. So I'm going to unlock that first so that they can record. They won't be able to record on this one because it's not. But one of the things you can do, Kelly, because Kelly asked a question, go ahead, unlock it again. Unlock it again. One of the things you can do is put on a mic, because they're used to seeing this with their phone, especially secondary teachers, is now if you don't have it locked, click the drop down, and you'll be able to attach the audio right to that particular screen. So you can record it. And can you click record just for a second? One of the things I want people to take note of, and people don't usually notice this, is in between, in the top right-hand corner, there's that little line. That little line shrinks it down to the bottom so you can see your screen and talk about what you're seeing. So Chani, just hit record right now. We'll just blabber something. And you could hit record and it would record it all. And then hit stop, add the audio, and it's there. So for most kids, I really think the mic has been probably, for us, Chani, the best way to add audio inside of Philly, because it gives the kids automatically a place to do it. There is a second way that Chani was talking about, and that's why I wanted to pull it off, because Kelly, you asked a great question. If they use the media button on the left-hand side, where there is also audio there, when you add audio that way, go ahead, start it and just record something, because this is what Kelly's problem was. Blah, 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 blah. Hit stop and add the audio. This is really hard to move. Kids don't understand that you really got to grab an outside corner, because if you grab the center, it just starts talking again. So it's one of the reasons that we started adding mics, so it gave the kids direction of where they needed to go.
All right. Awesome. That's great.
Right. We also have another one. Was there a reason why the colors are different?
Well, definitely in the one that I created. For you, was there a reason why the turquoise and the greens and the purples?
There was not. It was rainbow. I was a rainbow kind of day. In some of them there were, and some of them there were not.
Yeah, absolutely. So in this one here, that's a great question. In this one here, I did this as a support really for myself as the teacher so that I would know what the first one was. So I purposely made the starting word turquoise. And then the ones that I put there, made them purple. So again, I would know what I created. And then what the students did, I would know that was anything that was green. So it was just a nice visual for me to set up to use those different colors. So they can have meaning or not. It's 100% up to you.
And David asked a good question too about our student submissions, such as audio explanations and the diagrams saved for forever in Lumio. Yep. I've never hit that. Now there's usually like a 5-minute limit on the recording itself, but there's not over a whole file. So you could record as much as you wanted. I do have to tell you, our foreign language teachers are absolutely loving this, because you can hear every kid speak when you don't have time to hear 35 kids speak. So there's some really nice things there that all go with it.
That's fabulous. All right. We ready to try a different example?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's go. Okay. So that was a high school algebra example. Here's another high school example. So in this one, oops, I didn't get rid of my text there. But in this one, what we have is Macbeth. And so we're just starting with one. And then the students will have to pull out one that they want. And they will have to, again, put it where it belongs, and then they have to explain. Okay, so I'm going to do my microphone, I'm going to record, and I'm going to say, okay, Lady Macbeth, deception, and I'm going to give an explanation about how those things connected. All right, then I have a blank one here that my students can use, because maybe there's other pieces that they want to add beyond the word bank that I gave them. Okay, so that's another example. Okay, so if I pull this one out, and I pull out an add text here, I can click in here and I can add my text. Okay, so that's another example of a way that we could use this. So the first one, I gave a couple of answers. The kids had a word bank and they had to pull over and figure out where they want to go. The next one, we gave them all the answers and they just had to tell us why. everything connected the way it was. This one, we gave them a word bank and we gave them a blank so that they could come in and they could fix it. All right. And then with our next one, this example is so we gave you high school examples. The first one with the science words was middle school examples. Now here's a lower elementary example. So this is a second grade standard. Okay. Next gen science standard. And this standard says to develop a simple model that mimics the function of an animal in dispersing seeds or pollinating plants. Okay. So what we've done here is I actually added instructional audio to give students directions for what they would need to do. And then basically they're going to come in and they're going to have to say, okay, I want to show how it's going to, what would be the function of the animal in dispersing seeds or pollinating plants. I've got my bee and it's got the pollen on its legs. And if there's a bee and pollen, there has to be a plant, and plants get energy from the sun. And so here's my students that are going to explain that. Okay. So this is an example of a second grade leveled one that students could do.
And I just want you to, because some of you noticed the layering in the first one, it really depends on your use. Like in the first one, Chani and I really thought the kids needed a word bank to be able to pull from to kind of get them started to where the connections were. In the math, I really just wanted them to be able to kind of explain where all the pieces were, so I already had them there. With that Macbeth one, we literally left the extra one there so you could add thoughts as you needed. It was something else. But the kids need to understand some of the background behind that, like that Macbeth one. The hexagon is infinitely cloned and the text is infinitely cloned. So when you pull a hexagon out, it becomes the front layer of an infinitely cloned. And the same thing with the text. So you need to know to pull the hexagon first and the text second. But there are some great ways. And this right here, if you have a smart board in your classroom, this is a great thing for the front of the classroom because those kids are talking, that discourse is going, and you've given them some lovely connections.
Absolutely, right? They're talking through it. And you can easily, as the teacher, you can give them one piece and say, okay, show me how the deer with these other pieces, how's the deer going to be pollinating? Like, how does that happen? How is the deer helping for stuff to go on? And so the kids are going to have to pull it out and they're going to have to explain. And if we're doing this as a whole group or like a rug activity, because this is second graders, then, they're popping up, they're clicking and they're moving things on the smartboard and they're explaining their thinking while they're doing it. And they're having this conversation and this discourse. So this is just another way to model how we could use this activity.
And now that I'm thinking about the question you just asked me, does a deer trample over the flowers, which then moves the stuff around even farther? Is that how they're connected? Or there's probably multiple ways, isn't there, because of the thinking that we're trying to do? I never thought of that question before.
If I wanted to connect those two, what would the apple have to do with the deer and pollinating and dispersing seeds? That's actually the hint, dispersing seeds.
Well, I would assume out the back end, it would disperse the seeds after it ate them. So that would be my...
There you go.
And you heard it here first. How that happens, guys.
That's absolutely. And then how did that happen? Well, first we needed a seedling. And how does the seedling get its energy and how does it exist and survive? We need the sun. And so, and we need a little bit of rain. So we can add that there. So we have lots of different ways that we can...
Oh, I like that rain and sun connection there. We did get a question in the chat about teacher pacing versus student pacing. So if you have a couple of these and you want to do it, right now Chani is very much in teacher pacing, which means you see on your side whatever she sees. But in this updated version of Lumio, if Chani, you'll show them where that pacing is. Now, when she hits student pacing, you'll see on your side, guys, if you're looking on your side, you now have the arrows. And you can go from slide to slide to slide and see whichever slides you want. That way you can work at your own pace, especially if you have a couple of these things. Or maybe you have a hexagonal thinking and you have them record. And then you have a match them up game or something afterwards to kind of see what they learned. And you can get the data from that. You got a lot of ideas. What I love about this, though, is then when Chani's ready to continue, she can just put it back in teacher pacing. Your screen automatically changes back to wherever she is. I kind of like that, being able to bring them right back.
That is great. And there's been times when I've seen this in class and worked with adults, honestly, and everybody's like, oh no, I was mid thought and I was right in the middle of doing this. And what are you doing? And so it brings their attention back. So yeah, so that's a great one. Swapping that pacing, it's super helpful little classroom management trick. All right, so we're going to move on. The next one that I have here, this is just basically what the template looks like that we grab. So this is what I started with. Okay, and we have our 3 different colors. And remember that great question earlier, do the colors matter? It's 100% up to you, right? They can matter, they can not matter. You can make them all the same color. It just depends on what you're trying to achieve with the tasks that you have your kids doing. Okay, but this is what the basic template looks like. And I do want to show you, Terry, can I show them?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to edit my session, I'm going to edit my session here. And then I'm going to come in here and I want to show you where to go to get to this template. Okay, so I'm going to click on add page. And right here underneath our graphic organizers, that's where this hexagonal thinking template lives. Okay, so I can just come click here, and right here, this is the one that I want. So I can click on this and then notice, I don't need the title slide. Maybe if I do want them all the same color, I can just grab this one. If I like the different colors and I have a purpose for the different colors, I can grab this one. Okay, so I'm just going to grab the new one, and I'm going to click add. All right. And it's just that simple. Wherever I was, that's where my new one gets added. Okay. So this is already pre-made. I just had to know it existed and pull it in and then use it with my students.
And that's where we got with that. Well, some kids are going to need a word bank. And then we started making different ones. So on the one that's here that Chani has, that's that layering because they're infinitely cloned. So if she clicks on that hexagon in the top left, yep, it's infinitely cloned. So it'll go on top of the next one. So you just have to realize it's all layering as you're adding these hexagons. Kelly asked some other good questions. Yes, you can lock them. And yes, you could also even group them and lock them.
Yes.
So I could group the text and the hexagon together if I wanted to be able to move it, but not worried so much about where that layering piece is. So you got some different options as you're editing in there. But this is literally the template that she started with. And then we just started talking back and forth between the two of us and said, oh, yeah, you could do this. Oh, yeah, you could do this. And we started talking about all the different examples there are. And some of you in the chat are coming up with some good ones also. So Kelly, I expect to see you do one on the 7th grade reading book. Just I'm telling you, I'm calling her out now because I think she'll get a good one out of like the Macbeth kind of idea, what you can do with it within theirs. But it's all about the discourse. And I think that's what I missed the first time. And yes. Chani helped me understand that it was all about the discourse. And then I got it when we started talking about gravity, and I didn't think it belonged where it belonged.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the idea of using this with stories, with novels, with talking about how different characters interact, plot points, conflict, there's so many great things that we can use this tool for in an ELA classroom. 100%. Great for science, for, the reasoning, the claim evidence reasoning piece, great for math, understanding how these different concepts connect, so many different applications and ways to use this graphic organizer. It's why it's one of my favorites. All right. So we're going to come on along here, and I just want to kind of circle you back to where we started. Okay. So again, now that we've experienced this tool, okay, we've looked at this graphic organizer, I just wanted to bring you back here. Remember uses for this. Right? We've talked about there's no single right answer. The why is the power, right? That dialogue. That's why that's in all caps. That's the important piece. Okay. And I want to kind of bring your attention to this bit down here, because this kind of gives you some application ideas, like unit reviews and synthesis is one use for this. Community building is another use for this. Tackling sensitive topics, argument mapping, right? There's a lot of really great discourse things that we can show to students using these resources or using this graphic organizer. All right. And then I wanted to make sure that I brought, as we're bringing this to a close, right? We're at 6:30. All right.
Yep.
So I wanted to make sure that I share to you these resources that are here. So each of these is a link. This is information from Cult of Pedagogy. There's a YouTube video. There's Edutopia articles. Here's one that we talked about, the ELA connection. This one is from the National Council of Teachers of English. Okay. And so here are some great articles if you want to read more about hexagonal thinking and how that graphic organizer can be utilized to support conversations and discourse in your classes.
And I stuck in the chat right now the teacher share link. So if you all want to click on that, you can create your own copy. So that way, when we're all done with the presentation tonight, you walk away with these great resources as you want to try to start making the connections yourself. It will also have all of the parts and the ways to contact Chani for later on if you want to ask me some more questions.
All right, awesome. And then I think, Terry, this is you.
Great. Also on that slide deck, just so you know, there are some great resources there about Lumio. So if you're new to Lumio, you might want to use the Learn Lumio or the Lumio YouTube. If you're interested in other webinars, we have webinars all year long. We also post the recordings up online. You can also look there. If you're more of a person that likes to just learn by tinkering, you might want to join the Academy and do the self-paced courses. They're all there also. Or you could join the global community, which leads us into the next slide, which is if you'd like to become an ambassador, like Chani is here, please join us. You do not have to be an expert. What you have to do is just love learning and love thinking about how this tool works and when it works. Doesn't work every time, doesn't work for everything. Nothing does, as those of you that have been in the classroom for a while know. But we'd love to have you become an ambassador. It's very easy to join. You get some great perks. You get the Shape Smarts feature. So a lot of times the engineers will sit down with this group and ask them questions. You get some sneak peeks and you get so many other things. And as Janice pointing out, there is just so many options. And it's funny, as I've seen everybody today, there's been some sessions on AI. There's been some sessions on immersive reader. It's really what your kids need is what you hone into, and which is great. That's one of the things I like about this tool is there's just so many different ways that you can use it. But we'd love to have you for ambassador. So please join us if you can to become an ambassador. And then, Chani, I am going to stick. Oh, nope, forgot. Got to mention it one more time. Remember, at 7:00 each night, tonight and tomorrow night, they will draw winners for the gift cards. So if you'd like to be part of that drawing on social media, whichever social media platform you like to use, just make sure you use hashtag LumioPalooza 2026 or at Lumio Social, all one word. Both of them will work. If you look at the bottom left hand, those are the two tags you really want to use because that will get you where you need to get to. If you highlight something that Chani did, you can even take a picture of her right now while she's got a good smile on her face. And then tag Lumio, so therefore that you can be entered for that drawing. All right, and finally, I'm going to put in the chat the survey link. At the end of the survey link is the certificate for those of you that are looking for credit hours, whatever you need. It's there, but we also like the survey just to see where we are, and it also helps us shape Palooza every year as we see what people are looking for. So if you would take a second and fill out that form, that would be awesome. And as you're filling that out, let me remind you that we still have a full day tomorrow of sessions. So if you have not already joined, look at some of the registration ones for tomorrow. There's some great events going on. I will stick that in the chat. You are getting kudos in the chat. They love this session. They're talking about ways that you can use this in future PDs. I actually think this would be a very good one to use in PD. So I hail to the person that wrote that because I started with Chani and said, I think the next time I meet with the School District of Philadelphia coaches, I actually want to make one of these with coffee. And we start with coffee and they could talk about, where do you put creamer? Where do you put iced coffee? Where do you put this? And I want to see how they make those connections. And I think that will make connections of how this can be used with different contents. It all starts wherever your love is. If your love is coffee, that might work.
That's absolutely
Chani, anything else?
No, we also talked about using this for talking to teachers about the practice of teaching. And this is a great way, if you're talking pedagogy in the classroom and having a group of teachers in a professional learning community or something like that. And, using this to, again, encourage that discourse amongst your teachers. So one other use for it with adults.
We've got lots of uses for it. You're probably all thinking about it. So, Chani, I really want to thank you very much for bringing this to us. It was definitely a breath of fresh air, something new. I have been so stuck in the Frayer model. Not that I'm going to change some of that because that's my ride or die
Absolutely.
graphic organizer. But it makes me think outside of the bubble that maybe I need to do this because this one's also going to help with that discourse because we need kids to talk. We need kids to understand each other's thoughts and that there's not always one right answer, that there's lots of different right answers.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for coming. I think there's one more keynote at 7 tonight. And if not, hopefully I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you all and have a good evening.
Thank you, everybody.